When a client is upset, the instinct, especially for a high-performing, solution-oriented people such as veterinary professionals, is to immediately want to jump in and problem solve, right? We're doctors, we're nurses. We want to go in and solve the problem right away, to give context, to explain the diagnosis, and defend our process that we've implemented. But don't, just let them finish. Sometimes people don't talk more than about 60 seconds. So giving them that space to be heard is really important. Don't interrupt or jump to defend them. Don't defend the bill, right? Just really go into this place of listening, because it's going to set the temperature of the whole room for the de-escalation journey. Hello, and welcome to the Evolve Vets podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bethany Weinheimer. Hi, friend. If you're new here, hit the follow so you don't miss what's ahead. And if you're ready to take this work beyond the podcast, you can learn more about my coaching program and membership at theevolvevets.com. Hello, and welcome to the Evolve Vets podcast. Today, we're talking all about concerned customer calls. And for me, this is really important, and it's something I've learned throughout my journey in leadership. And so I want to share all the tips for you. And I'm sure all of you have had experiences like, the customer that leaves a 1-star review, or the one who says, I want to speak to your manager in front of the entire staff. Or maybe they've left your nurse crying in a break room. I'm sure all of you have a version of these scenarios that has come up in your mind. And if you're in a leadership role, or even if you're a doctor, a vet tech, a receptionist, you all have the power to learn how to handle these customer concerns in an inspiring way and in a way that de-escalates the challenge at hand. So today I want to talk about all of it, how to handle that moment when the client gets upset in real time, maybe in an exam room or on the middle of the floor. And then I also want to think about how to build systems to empower your team so those moments don't escalate, as well as thinking about those customers that give you feedback after the visit and how to handle those too. And all of these are just purely from my experience and processes that I've made to make these concerned customer calls even easier. Before we talk about exact steps, I want to talk about the why. In veterinary medicine, we're not usually dealing with a straightforward complaint about a single product or a service. We're dealing with people who are scared, people who love their animals, and maybe have other things going on in their lives outside of veterinary medicine. When people's nervous system is activated, their cortisol is elevated, and they're not sure what to do with their pet. Maybe they're worried about finances or insurance or having a savings account for their pet. If they didn't plan for this either emergency or this vet visit or this dental, it really can lead to this state of stress for their nervous system that they need a little support in. And so maybe that estimate ends up being higher than they expected, or maybe they end up needing to do more diagnostics than they did last time as their pet becomes a senior pet. Maybe the client didn't totally understand the diagnosis, right? They're feeling dismissed, they're feeling alone in their treatment process for their baby. And when they ask questions, maybe they don't totally process everything until they get home. And so here's the truth. Most client complaints aren't what they actually say they're about. Most client complaints are coming from a place of fear and wanting better communication. So the client might say something like, your prices are outrageous, but it really translates to, I love this animal deeply and I know how to afford to save them, and I feel completely powerless. Or nobody told me anything might actually translate to, I felt invisible in a moment where I really needed to feel seen. And I'm not saying clients are never wrong, right? There's oftentimes we get amazing feedback from our clients and it is really helpful information. But from a starting place of understanding and just having empathy for the moment that they're in is really the best way to respond. It will move you out of defensive mode and into connection mode, being able to focus on the main priority, which is the health and wellness of the pet in front of you. So the thing I want you to carry into every difficult client conversation is a question that says, how is this person feeling right now? Despite the words, how are they feeling? Can I put myself in their shoes and say, maybe they're feeling a little scared or overwhelmed or like they don't understand? And when we can empathize with the client on the other side, that sets everyone else up for the best success. And it really puts that patient at the priority. I want to talk you through 5 steps that can help real time in a scenario when you're faced with a customer concern. Step 1 is getting them out of a public space. this client is upset in a public area, maybe the lobby, the front desk, or a hallway, your first move would be to invite them somewhere a little bit more private. Because de-escalation happens faster when you're not in front of an audience, you're not getting everyone in the room riled up, right? So just really taking that pause to pull them into another room can be the start of a de-escalation journey, and it's really helpful. It might sound something like, I hear you and I want to make sure we can really talk about this. Do you mind if I bring you to a more quiet place so I can listen? Most people will say yes, right? There's some who won't want to move into a more private space, but for the most part, you're going to get a de-escalation tactic by simply moving them to another area and letting them know that you're their main priority and you want to hear what they have to say. Step 2 is going to be listen before you respond. This one might feel obvious, but sometimes it's really hard to do in practice. When a client is upset, the instinct, especially for a high-performing, solution-oriented people such as veterinary professionals, is to immediately want to jump in and problem solve, right? We're doctors, we're nurses. We want to go in and solve the problem right away, to give context, to explain the diagnosis, and defend our process that we've implemented. But don't, just let them finish. Sometimes people don't talk more than about 60 seconds. So giving them that space to be heard is really important. Don't interrupt or jump to defend them. Don't defend the bill, right? Just really go into this place of listening, because it's going to set the temperature of the whole room for the de-escalation journey. Here's something that I've learned along my journey. Most people, when they feel unheard, they really want to get to a place of de-escalation and making sure they're focusing on the priority too. So lean into that step. Step 3 is reflect and validate before responding. When they're done, right? The first thing out of your mouth shouldn't be a solution or an explanation. Make it reflective. So you could say something like, what I'm hearing is you felt like the wait was really long today and nobody updated you on what was happening. That sounds really frustrating, especially when you're worried about your pet. Another example could be, it sounds like the estimate we gave you felt like it came out of nowhere, and you're feeling a bit overwhelmed about the cost on top of everything else that's going on in your life. Let me break it down for you. Just because you're empathizing with them doesn't mean that you're agreeing something's wrong or you're taking the blame or demonstrating. All you're demonstrating is that you've heard them. And naming that feeling that they're having underneath the complaint might be the actual step that gets you to meet in the middle. Some people might argue that this is an admission of guilt, but I don't personally believe that. I find that when we meet people with empathy, compassion, the conversation is more likely to work toward a coupled resolution. Now, step 4 is respond with ownership and focus on the outcome. So now this is the part where you really get to talk and share, and I want to think a little bit deeper about framing. So you might say something like, I understand that you're frustrated, and the reason the wait is so long is because we're understaffed and it's somebody else didn't come in, right? They don't want to hear that. I would not recommend saying that one. But if you instead flip it and say, you're right, the wait was longer than we would have liked it to be. I'm really sorry that you felt like you were left without information in a time that's critical for your pet. What is happening? I wish we would have been able to do that differently. So what's the difference? The first one starts with a but and is a little bit combative, but the second one actually creates consistency, empathy, and partnership through the ownership. It's not admitting to fault. It's simply saying that, yeah, I really do wish there was a less of a wait tonight too. And you don't have to justify it by saying people didn't come in for their shift or people weren't available or that you're understaffed. Because in that moment, the client doesn't really care if somebody didn't show up for their shift. They just see that their pet is hurt and they want you to be their priority. Code blue. When you hear that in the emergency room, it means a patient is coding. Everything stops. All hands lean into the highest priority. That's the energy of Code Blue coaching. It's one-on-one intensive program that I built if you're in or headed towards burnout and overwhelm right now. By using my proven Evolve Vets method, we'll walk through a 6-month program helping you regulate your nervous system, understand your patterns, shift your limiting beliefs, and design an authentic action plan just for you. So come join me so we can bring you back to life. Step 5 is name a concrete next step. The conversation can't really end without a next step. You don't do something big like, we'll just look into it or let me see what I can do. Instead, take accountability. I'm going to personally review your account and follow up with you by the end of the day. That's the next thing I'm going to do. Or I have client service reach out to you within 24 hours. Here's what I want to do to make this right. These are all great examples of exact next steps. And even if the next step is something small, it gives the client the intentionality that you have to make it right and really partner with them on their pet's health and their care. Now, sometimes we all get clients that don't really de-escalate in the way that we hope they would. Sometimes you do all 5 of these things and the client still gets angry. They're threatening a lawsuit. Maybe they're recording the conversation. They're escalating physically or verbally, and maybe your team feels unsafe. I've been in all these scenarios, and they can be really overwhelming for all those involved. Now, in these situations, you have the right to and the responsibility to set a limit. There's been many times that I personally have been in a scenario where interacting with the client and setting boundaries around what they're allowed to say or not say is really important. In these scenarios, I might even ask something like, hey, it seems like I've lost your trust here. Is that what's happening, or how do we reset? Just calling out the pure fact that they maybe are having some complications bonding with you and trusting you as their veterinarian or veterinary professional, it's okay to swap them out. And usually just by calling attention to it, it really creates that sense of safety. One time I've said, hey, it seems like we don't have the appropriate trust here to make sure Fluffy is getting the best care that she can. Now, if this is true, I'd really love for us to find a veterinarian for you that can work for your pet. There's several other on the floor. And if you want to reset with another doctor, I can definitely make sure to grab someone else. The wait time might be a little bit longer, but the goal is to make sure that you trust whoever is helping Fluffy with her care and giving the best treatment possible. And usually around that time, they'll say like, no, I'm just stressed. I definitely trust you. I'm sorry if it came off that way. But just calling it out and saying like, hey, there are other options. I'm not the priority here. My ego is not the priority. The priority is making sure your baby is taken care of. Oftentimes that brings over a new layer of camaraderie and help for that baby. One thing I've learned in my time of leadership is that most client complaints actually escalate to a crisis point, but it is preventable. Not all of them, but most of them. Because complaints escalate when people feel like they're being ignored or dismissed, or maybe they don't have enough information. Most practices, even the good ones, have gaps in their systems that kind of create these conditions unknowingly. So I'd love to do a deeper dive and talk about our systems. Proactive communication is going to be the most powerful tool. The number one driver of client complaints and veterinary board complaints is communication. Unmet expectations, waiting around, wait times, costs, misdiagnoses. All of these come down to communication as the root. So creating a system for communication within our teams is going to be so important. If your lobby wait is usually about 30 minutes, tell people at the check-in, give them a window, not a certainty. Hey, it's looking like it's going to be 30 to 45 minutes right now, but I'll check in with you around the 15-minute mark to let you know where we're at. In the ER, that can be difficult to predict. So I usually just tell people, hey, bring a book or a snack while I'm on the phone with them, telling them if they should come in. So this is Dr. Michael Heider's idea. It's been amazing for me, and it really helps me set the expectation for a customer that the wait time might be very long as we work up treatments. If the estimate's going to be higher than anticipated, tell them before they see the number, hey, I want to walk you through exactly what I recommended and why before I give you the total. I want to make sure that everything makes sense and we're aligned. Usually I recommend going through each item on the invoice line by line. Maybe you're waiting on labs or another veterinarian to come for the exam. Tell them exactly what waiting looks like and approximately how long. Radio silence is usually the thing that keeps patients and clients that start to get angry. You know it, the one that starts to make eye contact with you from across the room. They start to poke their head out of the door. Those are usually signs that they're feeling agitated and they want a little bit more attention from you. Instead of resisting the eye contact or hiding behind your computer or sending the nurse in, I would recommend just going up, asking them how they're doing, what they need, because sometimes it's really simple. One time I was working a shift and there was a cute little golden retriever puppy on the back couch, and the owner all of a sudden started making eye contact with me while I was sitting on the floor typing my notes. And at first I was like, I'm not sure if she's looking at me. And then I decided like, okay, I'm going to get up and go over and ask. This is when I was first on the beginning of my leadership journey, but it made a huge impact. So I got up and walked over after I realized, yes, she was staring at me. And as I approached the bench, she said, hey, I just wanted to know how much longer this is going to be. And I was like, well, we just sent off the x-ray report for the radiologist to read. What we're anticipating is usually an hour turnaround time. And this wave of fear fell over her face, and she was like, well, I have to pick up my kid from soccer practice. And luckily, because I had gone and talked to her about it, I offered for her to keep the golden retriever puppy at the hospital while she went and picked up the kids. They got home from soccer, maybe get dinner. And by the time they came back, we had the x-ray report, the blood work, everything had come back, and I was able to talk her through those results. But if I would have just waited, she would have sat there with every ticking minute getting frustrated and upset that she didn't know how long it was going to take, or the fact that she could leave and take care of her kids while simultaneously we were running these diagnostics. Prep the client for good results. I know this might seem silly, but I do it all the time in the emergency room, but it can apply to general practice as well. I usually say, hey, it would be really great news if we got your blood work and x-rays back and it didn't show us anything significant. That would be truly amazing. It's rare that I get to give good news, and we want that. But the value of running these tests comes in when we run these tests on a regular basis, like your annual blood work. If we catch these things early, that can be very helpful. So it would be amazing news if we got all normal results back. But in the case that that doesn't happen, we're able to partner together to make sure Buster has a long and happy life here with you on this earth. I recommend building a client communication protocol, and I recommend writing it down. Every practice having a way that they communicate with their clients. They're trained and it's practiced through drills on how to handle client communication in highly stressful situations or in disgruntled customer situations really matters. Who updates the client? How often? What do they say if there's nothing new to report? If you have a triggered client, what do you do to de-escalate the conversation and try and solve it for yourself? This usually lives in the heads of experienced team members, but maybe isn't documented and isn't accurately trained on regularly. So then if you have staff turnover or a new client that expects something different, there might be a breakdown in that training process. So not all of your team is giving accurate and consistent communication to the customers in your hospital. I recommend giving autonomy to your team to make real-time decisions. This will help them build their resiliency, one, by going into those conversations more often, and it will give them a level of autonomy that allows them to make those decisions and follow through on them. It also means that they get better at having these difficult conversations because they're more likely to go into them with the power to fix them. When your team gets better at meeting customer expectations, it usually resolves quickly from this concerned customer experience into a happy customer where your team is partnered with them. It also helps grow leaders and empower other people on your team to learn leadership skills. No matter what, it's a win-win for everyone involved, the client, your employee, as well as your patients. Create an easy feedback pathway as well. One of the best things you can do for your complaint volume is make it easy for clients to tell you when something's wrong before they leave the hospital. So they don't go home, just write a review and stew on it and tell their friends and families. If you have an opportunity to fix it real time, then I highly recommend that. One simple system is an automated text 24 hours after a visit, or maybe having a receptionist call and check in. Also, the receptionist can ask how everything went before they check out. This gives them the opportunity to fix it real time. And you're able to catch these dissatisfied customers before they even go out into the world. When I receive a disgruntled call from a client, I also recommend calling them back and trying to resolve it within 24 hours. The quicker you resolve it, the more that they know you're there to partner with them, and it's not just to check the box. Of course, when they leave feedback through a channel such as Google reviews, Yelp reviews, instead of just walking away, take it seriously. Pick up the phone, give them a call within that 24-hour period to let them know how much you mean to them. And what I do is handle these reviews with intentionality because negative reviews are going to happen. It's almost impossible to have a zero negative review hospital, but the goal is to create a practice that responds to this feedback in a way that builds, one, the person who wrote the review, the pet that they were representing, as well as anyone who reads the response. I personally recommend responding to every review, including positive reviews and negative reviews. This helps claim ownership and it invites the customer back into a communication, right? So it might say something like, hi, I'm Dr. Weinheimer. I'm the medical director here at Good Hope Hospital. And I really hear your concern. This sounds really important and I'd love to address it. Do you mind giving me a call today? Here's my cell phone or the number of the hospital, depending on what you feel comfortable with sharing with these customers. I would recommend calling that customer back right away, using the PIM system and finding their information based on what they give you on the Google review as well. This is going to be the best way, getting them on the phone to create resolution instead of trying to keyboard warrior it and solve it over the internet. When a client is upset or gets loud or personal, sometimes clients can say things that are cruel, and it doesn't just affect the interaction, right? It affects our teams too. And sometimes for days afterward, if you have a vet tech who maybe was told she didn't know what she was doing, or a receptionist who was called incompetent in front of a whole lobby of people, the nurse who had a client threaten to report her to the board over a simple misunderstanding. These aren't abstract events. It's what happens to us sometimes on the floor. Although rare, they are things that we see. And it's important to make the people that we work with feel safe at work. And it's important that leadership addresses these so people feel safe as much as they possibly can. I think another important thing to mention here is if you have a client that consistently is upset, it's important to fire them. Fire that client. You do not have to tolerate anybody in your hospital. If they are not aligned to your principles and to how you want your team to be treated, it's okay to write them a letter and just say that they can have their veterinary care provided somewhere else. If this episode is landing, the deeper work lives inside the Evolve Vets membership. It's monthly coaching, vet reset meditation library, and a room full of women who get it. Come move from force to flow and really lean into living your most evolved life. Follow us at evolvevets.com. Who knows, your evolved bestie might just be waiting. I want to talk about what happens in these moments when you do have that escalation on the floor in front of people. I recommend debriefing immediately after. When you have that difficult client interaction, of course, we want to settle it in the moment as much as possible. And someone on the leadership team or a doctor, a shift lead, whoever it might be, check in with those team members who are involved. It doesn't have to be a formal meeting, but just, hey, that was a really hard one. Are you okay? Is there anything you need from me right now? And being open and listening gives people the space to experience it and let it go. People who feel seen in the moment are more likely to recover from it. So it's okay to create a space where your team has open conversations. It's also really important to validate the experience that they had without fueling the fire, which is a really difficult balance at times. So you want to validate this experience. Yes, that was really hard. No, you didn't deserve to be spoken to that way, without turning into a client bashing session that, has everybody going home angrier than when they showed up to the hospital, or it's something that's talked about shift after shift. That's where it becomes a little bit more into gossip instead of solving the problem. Focus on the team member, how they handled it. What did we do well that went great? And what can we do differently in the next moment that we have a difficult client situation? Of course, we also want to be building language. One of the most empowering things you can do for your team is give them scripts and phrases that feel natural to them, but help them navigate these difficult moments without having to improvise under this immense pressure that they're under. It might say something like, I completely understand your frustration, and I'm going to get someone who can help you with this right now. That's one who maybe needs to delegate. I hear you, and I want to make sure you get all the information you need. Let me take down your contact information so someone can follow up with you personally. Or if there are scenarios that they're solving on their own, hey, it sounds like you're upset about this blood work and you don't truly understand it. Why didn't I grab the doctor so they can talk it through you a little bit more? Or even if it's a medication, hey, we just administered this pain medication. Can I talk you through it on a deeper level so you have a better understanding of what's going on with your baby? All of these are options that in language that you can decide on ahead of time to help foster your patient's care and making sure your team is prepared for these difficult situations. So give your team these tools, practice them, role play, go through, do different drills to make sure your team feels ready when this concerned customer arrives. Know when someone needs more than a debrief. Sometimes a difficult client interaction is the last straw, and they've already been through a lot that day. So know your team well enough to notice. Check in again the next day. Watch for signs someone might show when they're emotionally depleted. And make it part of your leadership practice to ask, how are you actually doing? What's really going on here? Because the team knows that if their leader's paying attention to them, that the team's able to have this vulnerable space to share the things that are going on with them. Now, this is for all those phone calls or Google reviews that you get after the visit. And I follow a system called Beams that I created about 5 years ago. And it's first, be curious. Ask about the pet. Ask how their baby's doing since their visit. Ask about their experience, right? I'm so sorry you had a bad experience. So I want to start by thanking you for feedback that you're giving us so we can learn on how to do better next time. I know your time is so valuable, so thank you for sharing it with me. This really matters. I would really love to hear your side of the story so we can grow from this feedback. Thank you for taking the time to share this with me. So that's all in the be curious step. E is empathize. So try to put yourself in their shoes. Maybe say something like, I understand how that would be really frustrating. Or I can see how it would make you feel like your pet wasn't a priority to us. The A in Beams is apologize. I'm really sorry this happened. Here at my hospital, I really hope that we give people the best experience that they brag to their friends and family about. And clearly we didn't meet your expectations today, and I'm really sorry for that. I really want to make it right, which is the M in Beams, make it right. Which is ask them directly, how can I make this situation right for you? It might look like a training for a doctor that maybe missed the mark on a medication, or it might look like a staff training around communication to make sure they understand the value. Whatever they ask for, do your best to meet their needs. I usually recommend going into these calls by having something prepared in case they say, I don't know. It will happen commonly, right? So you can come prepared with maybe if we misdiagnose something, we come prepared for a refund for that lab work or a training on how to teach the team to walk through those estimates. You have something prepared for these conversations, so it helps them know that they're not alone in the solving process and you're not just there to listen, you're there to also take action. Now, the last part of Beams is asking for a second chance. Hey, we're only human and clearly we missed the mark on this one. I want to implement these new things we committed to during this conversation. And if your pet ever has another emergency or needs to follow up with us as a general practitioner, would you be willing to give us a second chance? We're only human and we definitely didn't do it the best this time, but I'd love to make it up to you in the future and hear your feedback, hopefully, of good news after you have that experience in our hospital. Usually at the end of these calls, I love to do a little thank you. So I usually say thank you so much for your time and your feedback. Please give Fluffy a hug from us. This was a really great conversation. I appreciate your time and energy to make sure that we're doing this right. And oftentimes they love that. Now, not every call goes the best, right? Some people are still upset at the end of the call, but I did everything in my power to bring us together and make sure that Fluffy or Buster or insert new dog name here is the priority. The truth of the matter is client complaints are going to happen. They're going to happen to your team. They're going to happen to you. They're going to happen at practices as you do the work. When you get these negative feedback, it's not evidence that you're doing it wrong. It's just a part of the work. We have to learn. We have to hear the feedback, take it in, ask a lot of questions, and use that as a way to make us better next time. And remember, you have the power to respond to these in the moment through systems, and your team can be empowered to give $50 away or care for the people who show up every day by asking how they're doing after a tough client interaction. People in your hospital are the people you work with. They're the ones who bridge the gap and provide the best medicine possible. So stay human, stay regulated, and build systems to take care of your team and take care of yourself. I'm Dr. Beth the Vet, and this is the Evolve Vets. Together, let's stop revolving and start evolving. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Evolve Vets podcast. It truly means the world to me. If this episode supported you or sparked something new in you, please go to evolvevets.com to become a member or join our coaching program and truly continue this work beyond the podcast. Let's evolve together.